just before we conclude here, I'd just like to. So you did a talk at the CrossFit conference in August last year, and introduced a concept, I think, that to this, like, it adds another kind of side to this whole conspiracy, and it's not just politics, and it's not just the big pharma and the grain industry and the sugar industry that are funding all of this, all this negative press that we're getting. But it turns out that your wife Belinda did, from what she was telling me yesterday, was about 3 years worth of research. And her main reason for doing it was to try and understand why people were so aggressively coming after you for what you were talking about.
For what anyone who's standing up for low carb,
right,
is why are we being done over? Because the science is obvious. You know.
So tell us a bit about that.
Well, processed food, in the amounts we're having, I think is harmful. And I talk about inflammation, I talk about modern disease, and that when we do the reverse of eating too much sugar, refined carbs and polyunsaturated oils, you feel better, you get less inflamed, and things start reversing. And we're seeing the results of that. And so I was going blue in the face talking about the science. I'm under this medical investigation, and I pretty well submitted a thesis of information to them. And Belinda's gone, you guys are getting hammered here, and it's clearly got nothing to do with the science. So her research is, one of the great things here is, kids have left home, we're actually doing something together. Apart from her being awesome, you don't want to mess with her. When she starts researching something, and she's gone down rabbit tunnels and rabbit holes all over the place. And again, this is another jigsaw puzzle. The modern food and eating and inflammation, modern disease, insulin resistance is one jigsaw puzzle. There's another jigsaw puzzle there about what's influenced our eating and our food guidelines over the last 100, 150 years. And a lot of people go back and say that the government report and Ansel Keys, and that's where we got it all wrong. But it actually goes a lot further back. And so Belinda was putting this research together, and we were questioning ourselves as much as anything. And then before the CrossFit Health Conference, we actually dropped into Zoe Harkin, her husband Andy, Remus Walls came up from Cape Town, and we had 5 days telling them the story and saying, have we got this right, or have we got this completely and utterly wrong? And we sat there, computers going, 5 laptops in this little Welsh town. And I said to Zoe, I don't know where you live because it is unpronounceable name. We had a great time, and but we did actually put this together, and everyone actually said, no, this is real. So the story goes back before Ansel Keys. Now, what essentially the food guidelines of the world now, as we talked about, are essentially cereal-based whole grains. They're anti-meat, anti-fat, anti-dairy, and rapidly trying to move down this vegetarian/almost vegan pathway. And the arguments for that are it's good for it's good for our health, it's good for the environment, it's good for animals, and all that sort of thing. Well, it's all actually nonsense. So what Belinda's done is actually look at the origins of the food guidelines. And if we go backwards from there,
right,
the food guidelines of the world have effectively been set up by the Dietetics associations. If we go back to the beginnings of that, in October 1917, the American Dietetics Association was formed by a woman by the name of Lena Cooper. She was instrumental in that. And then she was a vegetarian that worked for a cereal company, and in fact was a protege of John Harvey Kellogg's.
Okay.
She then was influential in starting up the American Dietetics Association. She was instrumental in writing the textbooks for the first 30 to 40 years, and which were all based along this vegetarian cereal-based, anti-meat, anti-fat agenda. Every dietetics association in the Western world then followed suit. They all formed over a period of time, the British one, the Canadian, the Australian, the South African, New Zealand ones, all, and they took the American model, and they took the teachings. And that generation of education has gone on for 100 years of that same process is where we are now,
Right.
which has been turned out to be an obesity epidemic and a health disaster, and I argue an economic disaster and an environmental one related to monocultures, which is what I covered in that talk.
Mm-hmm.
But if we actually look at that, what happened? What was John Harvey Kellogg's role in it? Well, he invented cereal in the late 1890s, and the 101 cereal companies were started in a place called Battle Creek, Michigan, and they were the origins of the processed food industry, the modern processed food industry.
And that 101 is back in the day, like early 1900.
1900 to 1910.
Okay.
And so we have this, and then that group, but particularly John Harvey Kellogg, was actually promoting the formation of the American Dietetics Association. So there was the food industry establishing the Dietetics Association.
So they're establishing something to endorse their product, basically.
To give them credit, they thought they were doing the right thing.
Okay.
We need to get this message out to the people. We believe in this message of healthy eating, and let's write the textbooks, let's continue the propaganda. The secondary effect, it didn't hurt their business model.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
And so, but we've then gone back another step and say, okay, why were cereals invented? And that's the really interesting bit.
Okay.
So John Harvey Kellogg had a belief, he actually had a religious belief, that cereals were a bland food to quell our lustful thoughts and were to stop us from masturbating. And that sounds completely and utterly extreme, but I say to people, look, just Google cereal and masturbation, and right at the top of the list will come up the name John Harvey Kellogg. He had this bizarre idea that to have a clean life and a healthy life, you needed to not masturbate, and the way to do that was to eat bland food.
Cereal.
He was also into some fairly extreme ideas of circumcision and clitoral ablation, which were all practiced at the Battle Creek Sanitarium. And he was brilliant at his time, and he was highly influential. The Battle Creek Sanitarium was one of the biggest sanitariums in the world. It became the model for a lot of our modern hospitals. And the whole concept of fibre was there to actually cleanse your bowel and to cleanse your soul. And they were great believers in enemas to try and clean that. So you go to the Battle Creek Sanitarium, you were fed this bland food, this cereal. You were given enemas. It was all about cleaning the spirit, cleaning the mind. And unfortunately, the whole basis of this means that the cereal industry was started to quell our lustful thoughts, to stop us from masturbating. Unfortunately, they then started the cereal industry. They then started the Dietetics Association. They wrote effectively the textbooks, which are where we are right now. So all of those breakfast cereals are there, to stop us from masturbating. But I can't be completely lying, because National Geographic did an article on him only 3 weeks ago,
Right.
where this was the whole issue. It is a fascinating story of history. But now he actually came from a church group, which has been highly influential in our education. But you've got to feel almost sorry for John Harvey Kellogg, because he was brainwashed into this concept at a very young age, because he became involved with the church, and he was the typesetter of these original pamphlets about masturbation is bad, we need to eat from the Garden of Eden, it needs to be anti-meat. So as a 12-year-old, he's typesetting for these pamphlets and these books that are being written.
Right.
So he actually was raised under this enormous pressure to come up with this thought. So he actually then grew up doing that.
Right.
He was driven to improve health and well-being. And as a result of that, we then have what we've got now.
So he was part of the Seventh-Day Adventists, right? Okay, so that I think that's where I found it interesting, the addition of that influence of that religion on our overall dietary guidelines and dietary advice, and it seems like that they were very involved, and there's more than just money and big pharma involved in this. There's a religious piece of this as well.
It's really impressive because of what they've been able to achieve and where they are at this point in time, and they're still heavily influencing. They're not a big religious group, but they were born out of the temperance movement in the 1850s.
Right.
Yeah. And at that point in time, there was a lot of sin, for want of a better term, happening. The water wasn't drinkable, so light beers were being drunk. So as a result, you've got half the population half drunk
all the time,
half of the time.
Mm.
And so living and drinking alcohol was associated with violence and debauchery and all of that.
Right.
So to try and look at a cleaner way of living, out of that things were born the salting of meat, because meat, there was no refrigeration, so eating meat was bad for you unless it was properly salted or even fresh. Let's get people away from drinking alcohol. So we've got the origins of Coca-Cola, we've got the origins of chocolate, we've got the origins of eating better.
Which were all alternatives for the bad things.
Yes.
Right.
So that, again, well-intentioned at that point in time, and so therefore the concept of eating well, avoiding alcohol, they just got it a bit wrong. And then the whole, let's quell all those lustful thoughts was part of that. And they related to the visions of a young woman who had a head injury when she was about 9 years of age. And so since Ellen G. White had these visions, they became, I presume she was a bit of a social outcast at that time because she didn't go to school because of her head injury. So I think she was socially isolated, we presume such. She had these visions that fitted in with the temperance movement ideology. And all of a sudden they became the teachings of the church. John Harvey Kellogg was influenced by that as the typesetter. He's brainwashed. Ultimately then we've got the Seventh-Day-Adventist whole ideology. Now one of their mainstays is that medical education is the backbone, it's the right arm of the church. So they became very involved in medical education from the outset. They were putting literature out, they were writing pamphlets, they were putting in the books. They started Battle Creek Sanitarium, which is about bringing people together and educating them. They were involved in, as I say, the dietetics textbooks. They were also involved in the nursing textbooks early on. Prior to that, it was nursing would be you learn on the job. But John Harvey Kellogg, one of his, again, fellow workers, co-workers there, were talking about we need to educate nurses. So they got involved in the early textbooks of nursing, which have then been the model for education that followed on. And then they, in fact, nowadays continued that education. So they own 60 plus publishing houses. They are producing medical literature. They have 400 odd television stations, several hundred radio stations. They're the second biggest educator in the world after the Catholic Church.
So that's a huge influence.
They own hospitals. They own 24 food industries around the world. Not food companies, food industries. They started the soy industry. They brought from China, a fellow named China Miller. He brought to the US the soy industry. And so as a result of that, we now have the fake meat, the fake dairy, the soy milks, and they have vertically and horizontally integrated themselves into that market. So again, well-intentioned, they thought this was actually healthy. And at this point in time, they're now heavily involved in guiding, influencing guidelines around the world, right through to the World Health Organisation, right through to the American dietary guidelines, Australian dietary guidelines, diabetes guidelines. They're all there. Again, well-intentioned, they've just gotten it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And in Australia, if you go to your doctor, 95% of doctors will run 2 software packages in Australia, Best Practice and Medical Director. And if you go onto the back end of it, or you released even a couple of months ago, because things are just changing at the moment as a result of this. But as of 3 months ago, if you went onto the back end of your doctor's practice, the resource material was supplied by Kellogg's, Sanitarium, which is the Adventist-owned processed food company in Australia, or actually material that had been supplied by the Adventist Church. And it's medical education, but virtually every doctor in Australia is completely unaware that the resource material that's on their computer, which you presume has been vetted,
Right.
has actually been supplied by the processed food industry or a church group that have a belief that vegetarianism, eating from the Garden of Eden, cereal-based, anti-meat, anti-fat, anti-dairy, is the way to go.
Right.
And so that's what we're up against. So that's the thing which Belinda has uncovered in the last few years.
Right.
And we've put it out there. And the good news is nobody's arguing with us. And we've been contacted by current members of the Adventist Church, ex-members of the Adventist Church going, actually, you're right. And they're not denying it. They're actually quite proud of it. They've worked really hard for 150
To develop
years
that influence.
to develop the influence, and they're proud of it.
Wow.
And we've got to admire them. But sorry guys, you just got it wrong.
Yeah.
And
And let's at least stop this now. And it's not that's not going to happen. I think religious fervor is more powerful than even money can be sometimes.
We're optimists, okay? We hope, and we know that there are certain people within the Adventist Church group going, oh, maybe we're getting that wrong.
Okay.
The Adventist health studies are oversold by the Adventists, and they keep, and I talk about that in that CrossFit health talk,
Right.
in that they keep re-quoting themselves. So if you keep re-quoting yourselves, all of a sudden that's called propaganda. And that becomes, you keep repeating the message.
Right.
Whereas, if you eat this way, if you eat vegetarian, you're going to be healthier. And if you keep saying it over and over, people will start believing you. But if you're actually only re-quoting the same study 400 times, it's not valid.
Right.
So when you actually start dwelling into it, you're looking at other studies, you can actually find other groups in the world who are living longer than the Adventists. You can actually find higher cancer rates in some of the Adventist studies, but that's not convenient to keep your message going.
Right.
So it's interesting, and so once you actually understand the rules of the game, then you can start making up your own mind. So we've been blaming Ansel Keys and the fat,
And the Government Commission in particular.
but it's in fact who was actually influencing those players at that point in time, and they'd been influenced by what they'd been raised on
Right.
50 years before that. And that's, so for us, you come up with someone who puts out an article at this point in time, pro-low carb, anti-low carb, pro-sugar, anti-sugar, pro-polyunsaturated oils, anti-polyunsaturated oils. It's really simple. It's not that hard to actually work out what hat they're wearing.
Right.
And so therefore when someone comes out, we go, oh, you're wearing that hat. And I'm okay with it, but just openly admit it when you come to the table.
Right.
When you're going to go into a debate, when you're going to be influencing a guideline, if you're going to be writing a paper, just admit, okay, I'm a vegetarian, I'm a vegan, I'm a Seventh-Day-Adventist, I have this religious belief, I have this conflict of interest, I'm funded by the food industry, I'm funded by
pharmaceuticals, whatever.
Just tell me what hat you're wearing.
Right.
And one of the problems people have with us is we're actually not wearing any hat. We're not selling anything. We don't own a business
Right.
of trying to do anything with it. And So people keep saying, "Oh, why are you guys doing it?" Well, we're actually just doing because
it's right.
It's right. It's our own journey,
right?
And you're welcome to come on board.
Yes, and we're finding so many people that do come on board along the way are improving so drastically that that's what keeps fueling us to keep doing it.
And social media gives us that feedback. You know, we just showed you something last night. Someone's changed their life around and they say, "Right, thanks."
Right.
Well, I mean, so that's what we're paid. We're paid, and we're not after that, but it keeps.
It does help to keep going.
It keeps the energy going.
I agree. We get people writing to us all the time, telling us about how much being at a conference has changed their lives or their families' lives. Or one lady came from Czechoslovakia, and there was like no resources there at all, from the Czech Republic actually. So, and she said she went back and finally started her like a Facebook page to teach people in the Czech Republic about this. And she wrote to us saying, "Thanks so much for your influence in helping me to decide to do this." And we're about, by this Sunday, we're expecting to hit 10,000 followers on our Facebook page. It wasn't even a year old yet. And we reached one person, and she's gone back, and there's probably 20,000 now on her page that are learning about this from her because of that one connection. And that kind of stuff makes all the drama and stuff that we go through worthwhile.
The stance that I'm taking and what Tim Noakes has taken and has made and others have made is that what we're standing up for is it's okay now as a health professional to say it's okay to do low carb, healthy fat living.
Right.
Because there's this fear within the medical profession that if you actually come out and say this, you're going to get hammered.
Right.
And we're saying, no, the back is being broken of this.
Right. There's precedent now,
basically. The science is here. I'm not backing down. Tim Noakes is not backing down. Right. We're not going to do it. Mm-hmm. And the reason is others are doing it now. And so one of the things other health professionals are now doing, they come to us, and say, "Look, can I do this?" And I go, "Yes, of course you can. And if you get hammered, this is the way you're going to get out." Right. You're not going to get hammered now because it's now in cookbooks, it's now being talked about in the press. And most importantly, you're going to be helping patients and helping your family, helping your community.
Right. And I think at least this piece of our discussion, what comes out of it for me is that we've got this whole new thing that we need to be aware of when we're trying to talk to people about it, and that is this whole religious influence as well. I at least was never aware of up till this point. And like Belinda kept saying to us yesterday, you've got to know the whole story in order to be able to operate within it and try to advocate change. If you don't know what you're fighting up and what you're up against, then you're always going to lose, and you're never going to understand why, because you don't know your enemy.
Well, when I talk about when you eat food, the food is biochemically going to affect you. So what we eat, how we eat, actually affects us.
Of course.
We're manipulated by the food we eat. What we're also being manipulated is by the market. And how you go to the shops and you're told this is healthy and that's healthy, and it comes out of this packet and it looks beautiful, and we're told it's low fat and it's 99% fat free and it's all just garbage. But then we've got a culture that influences the way we eat. We've just come out of Easter and we've got your Easter eggs and we've got our grandson christening, but we didn't actually have a christening cake. But tradition has it you have a christening cake. Right. So. But we've got all these cultures of partying and celebration, which are all associated with sugar and junk food.
Correct.
And so, when you start understanding that our culture's been affected by 100 and 150 years of misinformation, and you've got our marketing, which has been affected by decades of misinformation, and then we've got a food industry giving us food which is deliberately mucking around with our taste buds and our hunger appetites, then we're actually at this peaceful spot at the moment where we don't understand everything, but gee, we understand a lot. Right. And if people understand more about it, then they can start making their own choices. They can start making their decisions. So if it comes out of a packet, well, what's been influencing it? Is it the food that's influencing it? Is it the marketing? Is it culture? It's all there. And guess what? Religion's actually played an integral role in shaping our guidelines for a long, long time.
Yeah.
But it's turned out, as I say, this monoculture of processed food is actually wrecking our agricultural land. I think it's an environmental disaster. The biggest export of the world agriculturally is its topsoil. So we're losing our topsoil, we're losing the organic matter in our topsoil, and it is a result of what we're producing, taking out of the ground. If we keep producing cereals, grains, canola, soy, corn,
yeah.
sugar, we're starved. So we need to change everything around. And the propaganda that this is actually good for us and good for the environment is actually just wrong. And the propaganda saying cows are bad for us and producing methane, well, I talk about that in the talk, in that, they're not the big producers of methane. They just happen to be big fluffy cows that the vegetarian vegan movement have decided we can actually hit people's hearts with. It's actually just false news, fake news.
Yeah, no, okay. I think Peter Ballister does a really good talk on that methane story.
And Peter and I communicate, and we have chats by Skype from time to time. He's brilliant, and watch his talks because there's some gems in there.
Yeah, no, we've got a few on our site there. We really encourage people to watch those too. Well, Gary, thank you very much. It's been fascinating, and I'm sure the conversations are going to continue until we get on the plane tomorrow. But it's been awesome.
It's been great that you've come down here and we've opened up your mind. You've sort of gone, crikey. But that's what it is. That's what it was for us. And
yeah.
It is for the majority of people. When they hear it for the first time, they go, it can't be. It's too confronting. But we've been discussing this for some years, and every day Belinda still comes out with, did you see that? Do you realise whose that is? That play is there. We know where the funding's come at our local university, our national universities in Australia. Who are the players? And I'm okay that they're playing the game, but declare your conflict of interest.
Of course.
And that's really what we're saying. Enough's enough. This is about patient health. It's about our health, about my health. It's about the wider planetary health. Enough's enough. We're at a crisis point on the planet right now.
I agree.
Health, economics, environment, and that's the talk. That was that talk. The central role of the nutrition in everything:
right.
Health, education, politics, economics, environment, and belief.
Very cool. Anyway, so thank you so much.
No, thanks for coming.
All right.